Hello and welcome to SoCalSports.com's weekly podcast, number 79, streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. I'm Vince Morales, filling in for John Stellman, our illustrious captain. I'll be in the captain's chair tonight, filling in for him. I'm here as always with John Adams and our special guest for this special NFL draft version of the podcast, Charlie Wright. And Charlie Wright is, he's a big man, got a big voice. We're all former Tritons, St. Clement Tritons. Charlie played college football for Saddleback College, their national championship team in 1985, and for the Florida Gators. So welcome, Charlie. How are you?
Thanks, Vince. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you, Big John.
Yeah, good to have you in the house.
All right. Yeah, Charlie's going to be our football expert for the NFL draft and give us his insights and some input. But before we get started, Charlie, I want to talk to you a little bit about what you're doing now with Kitman Labs. Is that did I get that right?
Yeah, Kitman Labs is a company that provides a software system that helps professional sports teams, intercollegiate sports teams, and national sporting federations aggregate and analyze and report on their performance metrics. There's so much data that's being captured from the strength and conditioning staff, the coaching staff themselves regarding performance on the field, on the ice, what have you, the court, and then of course the sports medicine staff. They're all trying to figure out how can we maximize performance of an athlete, a student athlete, return somebody to play, reduce the likelihood of injury. So there's very vast majority of a lot of companies that capture data, whether it be hydration, sleep quality, GPS monitors the distance traveled, accelerations, timing systems. All of that data has to be housed somewhere. So traditionally, the strength coaches would normally do manual timings, manual calculations in their strength programming. And then as these data sources started to come out, you've got to ingest and put them somewhere. So what our system does extremely well is as a very comprehensive and integrated system of aggregation, and acts as a repository of the system. And then it has a level of analysis that can draw correlations based on time frames to say, are your strength tests, are your programmings, your screenings maximizing the performance of an individual athlete?
Right.
If there's an injury scenario, you can draw correlations. If somebody's taken out as an offensive lineman and they injure an ankle, that's an acute injury that may be hard to prevent. But for the soft tissue, ACL strains, quad tears, things like that, you want to be able to try and mitigate that risk.
Right. So you're looking for analyzing performance, preventing injuries, just good sports science.
Everything to try and maximize performance, reduce injury rates, and ultimately at the professional levels, make sure that their investments are protected and staying on the field. There's many cases of players that have been out that are top producers offensively, defensively, scoring goals, blocking goals if they're a goalie, whatever the case may be. And if they're not on that field, then you have a lesser likelihood of winning. So it's all trying to maximize for the well-being of the athletes and for the productivity of the team.
Right. That's great. So on an institutional level, we're talking about amateur all the way up to the pro teams as well?
This would primarily be intercollegiate athletics and professional clubs. Now, at the professional club level, especially in Europe, where you don't traditionally go through the school system to achieve professional status, you kind of come in as an identification as a young kid. Soccer clubs might have somebody that's in as 12 years old and stays throughout the duration of their career or transfers on. So in that particular case, they're utilizing it on youth players in the developmental process, but it is in a professional environment, whereas here it's traditionally going to be at an intercollegiate level where they have the resources, the funding to monitor that type of wellness and performance.
So you mentioned that it's a European company, right?
Yeah, originally based in Dublin, Ireland. Our former physio and strength coach for Leinster Rugby, one of the successful teams in international rugby, Stephen Smith, was again running statistics and data collections, having discussions with his strength and conditioning staff, and oftentimes having maybe an opinion difference or an argument, or maybe not coming to an agreement on how they could best serve it, and said we need something to provide an unbiased assessment. So when we take our reports to management in the front office, the coaching staff, we can be aligned and take the emotion out of the decision making. Yeah. Still, at the end of the day, no matter if you can identify risk factors by injury types and whatnot, the performance staff, the sports medicine staff make their recommendations. The head coaching and the personnel directors ultimately make the decision. But again, they want to maximize that performance, so it having quantifiable, emotionless data truly helps a lot.
Right. So it sounds like we're seeing, Moneyball for it coming out of the, the front office for just statistics and putting it onto how somebody's doing physiologically, physically, and on the field, their performance and that sort of thing. That's great.
Absolutely. And baseball here in the States was the leader in kind of really statistically analyzing success. In Europe, though, Australia has really been the traditional leader in performance development. Sports analytics, not performance development, because the U.S. or the strength and conditioning coaches, performance coaches are raved for their techniques, but Australia has kind of been ground zero with England to follow. It was really about 3 Olympic cycles prior to hosting the Sydney Games, where they just got crushed in the Summer Olympics. Summer Olympics and sports are traditionally good at. So they said, well, what can we do to maximize that performance?
Right.
So they started to analyze, collect, and there's more sports science degrees in universities down under and across Europe. So America is catching up in that regard again, but America has always been looked at. This is where you develop talent. This is where the strategy is developed and whatnot. So
Right.
It's been nice that the U.S. is really trying to gravitate towards this position.
Very cool. I think we talked and during the Combines week, and Kipman Labs was in town during the weeks.
Yeah, nothing to do with the Combine itself, the event, simply to engage and talk with the performance directors, the general managers, strength and conditioning staff, just to continue to introduce what our technology has done, as well as meet with teams that already utilize our service. So it's a heck of an event to be at. A lot of activity going on for the entire week, and it's considered one of the most stressful job interviews that somebody could go through.
Absolutely. Physically, emotionally, mentally. Yeah, the Wonderlic numbers came out. Things like that, where it's not just about how fast you run or how high you jump, but also how you analyze something. Your analytic mind, and the Wonderlic test is a beast. Have you ever taken it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a beast.
Getting into my past running the Athletes Performance, now Exos Performance facility, we really had a leadership position of the industry for facility-based draft preparations, the NFL, the pre-draft camp, as they call it, in Chicago for the NBA, and the NHLs, which typically rotates among cities. But we would prepare our athlete clients for that, not only physically, body composition-wise, all of the nuances of what that week's event's going to be. They're basically there for 4 days, but it's very, very impactful and very chaotic, and I think that's one of the things they're looking for, to see who can potentially perform under stress, who has some adaptability to kind of go with the changes in scheduling and whatnot. But yes, the Wonderlic was something that we would prepare them for, and it's an aptitude test, but at the same time, there's some people that simply don't test well.
Right.
So it's not an end-all, be-all. You typically see quarterbacks, offensive linemen score well, but it doesn't mean that
unless you're T. Martin.
T. Martin.
Oh boy, he's still in your brain.
Yeah,
you got rid of him.
I know he's gone.
He's gone.
But
He's
I'm a
coming
dog
back.
with a bone, a T-bone.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So, Charlie, I would love to talk to you more about Kipman Labs and about that some other time. But let's segue to the draft, NFL football, and tell us a little bit about your football background and where you came from, and then talk a little bit about what's different from how you were maybe analyzed, from a performance perspective then, and what they're doing now.
Yeah, so obviously I graduated in '84 from San Clemente. I went to the University of California, Berkeley, out of high school. If you remember, we had a long-standing bet on dinner at Lowry's if we went to the Rose Bowl. Had some issues there at Cal that I was asked to leave the institution. Had to sit out with NCAA rules. Was very, very fortunate enough to win a national championship under Ken Swearingen at Saddleback College in 1985, the second one for the school. Bill Cunardy was our offensive coordinator. Dick McCullough was our defensive coordinator. Don Butcher. John Adams was a stellar golf athlete.
Actually, Cunardy was my coach.
There you go.
Won a state championship and dominated. And then again,
and then I wrote stories at the Lariat on Charlie.
For Mike Reed.
Yeah, for Mike Reed. Yeah, exactly.
Roger Fickling came back from University of Colorado. Was our fullback and was tremendous. Didn't transfer out after that, but just dominated.
That was a good team. 11-0.
11-0. We were the second 11-0 team. The 1981 team in my opinion, for the guys that I know, the talent they had that went out to the college ranks and the NFL after that, it would have been really neat to play those guys if you ever could have lined it up. But they were the first 11-0 team.
Because J.T. Schmidt, Schmidt was your quarterback, right?
He was our quarterback that he came out of Foothill High School, unrecruited, really a tremendous athlete, came as a safety, and for some reason got overlooked out of high school, moved him to outside linebacker. Don Butcher had his hands on him, and then had the ability to analyze and throw the ball and look downfield, and they turned him into a quarterback. So he backed up, played, really only started his sophomore year, and he was a National Player of the Year, was just inducted to the State Hall of Fame 2 seasons ago up in Visalia. And
now a restaurateur.
They had a little slot guy, Brett something.
Brett Marsola.
Oh, my gosh. Just a little scrapper.
Brett was from Burbank Burroughs High School. His father coached on Ken Swearingen's El Camino College staff in Torrance with Vince McCullough back in the middle 70s, and then went into private real estate development. So Brett was a big-time recruit, went off to Colorado as well.
Oh, did he?
He and Roger Fickling missed each other, but then he bounced back, came down to Saddleback, played 2 years. Actually went to Florida. We offered him, and he came down and then just wasn't the place for him. Came back to Saddleback, dominated a sophomore season, and went on to play at Rutgers and caught many balls at Rutgers. Yeah.
So he was a scrappy little guy to watch.
Yeah, he was very. He would be not a Darren Sproles where he's thick and big as a running back, but as his inside slot receiver, he could shake and get loose.
He was, if you put him in the side, he kind of had an Edelman kind of feel. He's just tough, small and tough, and ran downhill, and it was fun to watch.
Mousy voice, though.
Yeah.
Strong, tough, but literally talk like a little kid.
Mighty Mouse.
Yeah.
Mighty Mouse. So from Saddleback, you moved on to Florida.
To Florida, had a chance to compete and start in the SEC, and really enjoyed that. I had a teammate from Golden West College, Bobby Sims from Los Amigos. That was another offensive lineman on their side of the center, and had a great time down there. Had an injury my junior season, halfway through, missed it, didn't finish up, missed my senior year. The draft was out the door, but I did have a high enough draft ranking in my position group that after I rehabbed and got healthy in 1989, which should have been my rookie year, I was able to sign with the Green Bay Packers. Went into training camp, ended up having 2 knee surgeries, and the way I like to say it, a cup of coffee and some workers' comp. So had a great opportunity, had inopportune injuries, which meant my 3rd year in a row being out. So it was time to move on, and went on to Stanford University and got a master's degree in education, and coached as a graduate assistant for Denny Green for my first year, then Bill Walsh for my 2nd year. So exposed to just outstanding coaching, men, leaders of men, and really was very, very happy. My grandparents were season ticket holders at Stanford for years.
You are who he thought you were.
That was Denny. Denny was he was really instrumental in putting that program on the map, because for people before cable TV, we're growing up, Stanford went to many Rose Bowls during the 60s and 70s and had NFL guys coming out their ears, and with change in kind of admissions processes, really kind of started going more of a regional area. Their recruiting kind of suffered because they had the opportunity to get good student athletes in. Make a long story short, Denny was able to identify great football players and said, you're here to get a degree and go to the NFL at the same time, and truly promoted going to class and trying to get the NFL as much as you could. So he was really, really instrumental in that program's success.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great.
So let's talk about the draft. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on there. I confess I just have no idea what's going to go on. The whole Kyler Murray thing has changed. There was reports that he was going to be their guy, that they wanted him, that Rosen would be out, that he wasn't the guy there. Now the reports are that maybe that not so fast, that Kyler Murray will go number 1. Do you have any thoughts on this, Charlie? What do you think?
I really focus most of my attention on just the job in itself and working with the development process of athletes and student athletes. I'm not a fan per se as far as like what team is going to draft what player, but I do follow the players themselves. I think he's a special athlete. I think obviously what he's done on the baseball diamond and being such a high, I think he was a first-round pick for the A's organization, and really made a decision that he did want to go forward with football. I would be concerned from him from an offensive production standpoint that is he truly big enough and strong enough and durable enough to be that type of runner. Is he a Michael Vick, if you're going back a few years, for somebody who was extremely elusive but also threw the ball on a dime and was an accurate decision maker? I'd like to see that develop. I think Josh Rosen is phenomenal. I was really excited that they picked him, and he dropped, I think, what number 10 pick it was a couple years ago, last year. So I really think the future would be good in his hands. It would be a real challenge if they'd have to move him, obviously. So who knows what they do with that?
Yeah, it feels, John, like what happens if they break camp with Kyler Murray and Josh Rosen? If they can't move Josh Rosen, I mean, if that's really what they want to do, you take a quarterback with your number 1 pick and the first overall. I mean, that's a franchise guy, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the scary thing about it is, I think you really got to think about what you can get for who you have right now, and if you can't get anything for Rosen, I think you need to look at what's the second best player for you in this draft, and is that a defensive? Is that Nick Bosa, or is that the kid from Alabama? I don't know, but you got a situation where if Arizona doesn't pick him, where does he drop to? I mean, because there's a lot of teams underneath this that really don't need a quarterback, right? San Francisco doesn't need a quarterback. The Jets don't need a quarterback. I mean, do the Giants? Does
the Raiders?
But that's where the Raiders. But the Raiders have spent a lot of money on offense, right?
Right.
So you think,
and then
their
you were
whole
not going to
structure is
hand it
gonna be
over
towards
to
defense in this draft, and being a Charger fan, right? It kind of hurts because everything I see what the Chargers need, so do the Raiders. And they're picking a lot before before the Chargers, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, I think you guys have analyzed it. It's very defensive passer friendly. It's a very defensive type of draft. I know there's going to be some half a dozen offensive linemen that could go on the first day, but I think the crazy thing is we seriously could think if those guys convince that Rosen's their guy in Arizona, it could be quite interesting to see, does this guy drop all the way to Denver? I don't know, which is 10, I think, right? I think Denver's the 10th pick, but it's funny. There should be some type of a bet if you could pick the whole first day in the draft. Guy usually win $1 million because all it takes is a phone call, and and drop down, and it's great. It's like, I think you have a better chance of picking the NCAA first day, than you do in basketball, than you do trying to pick this, because phones are going to start ringing and guys are going to start getting moved all over the place because guys want to drop down. But I seriously think, I think he's a good fit for the new coach, right?
Right.
But if that's the case, how is Rosen not traded right now? He should have been gone.
You got to remember
right?
that what we know from a fan's perspective, what the media knows, is a lot different than what's going on in the general manager's communication with the other teams. So that already could be.
And the Raiders took all their scouts and said, somebody's leaking information here, get the hell out. And they put them all on a plane and said, see you later. So, I mean, it obviously it's a game, right? It's a game on how guys are going to pick. And I think I've never been in a draft room, but if you're sitting at a wall, you're like, what if they do this, we do this, and what if they do that, we do that. Like you got to have 3 or 4 guys that are ready to go that you're confident in, that that's our guy. He just got picked. Okay, here's our second guy.
From a team perspective, every position that they're looking for, and everybody in the draft is going to be evaluated. Obviously, there's more impetus and importance placed on the positions that they're looking to replace, the draft selection numbers, the round numbers that they have, which say these guys might be available. But there's thorough homework on everybody. And like you said, that draft analysis is trying to say what if games.
Right.
What happens here? What happens there? If our first guy is taken, if our second guy is taken in this position group, are we be comfortable to take the third pick? But it's emotion. And again, no relation to what Kitman Labs does as far as the performance analysis, but it is an emotional decision that, again, if teams could be as quantifiable and emotionless as possible, so the better. Look at what Bill Belichick has done with his drafts,
Absolutely.
with his free agency.
Yeah.
He has the ability to pick personalities, positions, skill sets that match what they're looking to do. In some cases, very limited, 3 or 4 things that a player can do for him, and at a salary level that they can command. And they tend to get guys that want to buy into the philosophy. So again, trying to be very systematic, programmatic, and maybe as less responsive as possible.
Yeah.
Talk about Belichick. Would Rosen be a good guy to fit behind Brady
at the right price? I don't think that the price is right there for Belichick. I mean, he's got 12 picks. I think he'd roll the dice as far as that and for a quarterback. He's not going to overpay. The Cardinals, if Cliff Kingsbury really wants Kyler Murray, right? Everybody's just going to sit back and say, take him, and then call me about Josh Rosen. Because I want him, but not,
not at that.
Let's see what you do.
And what do you think he is worth? What is Josh Rosen for? A 1 and a 2, a 1 and a 1? Like, what is he worth?
You're worth what somebody's willing to give.
Right.
And you either accept that or you just don't accept it, right? More or less, right? So, okay, so if you're the Arizona Cardinals and you say go ahead and pick, so you guys are comfortable with having 2 number 1 picks of quarterbacks in 2 years.
Yeah, but there's a big right, and there's guaranteed money.
Too.
There's guaranteed money there.
Offensive tackle.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true. Yeah.
Right. They're better off, right, saying Kyler Murray. Who wants Kyler Murray? Who wants to move up for Kyler Murray? Or who wants Nick Bosa? Who wants to trade me for Nick Bosa? And then we take Jonah Williams because he's a can't miss, right?
Or Andre Dillard from Washington State.
Right.
I love Jonah Williams.
Yeah.
Andre Dillard is quick as a cat, plays that left tackle very, very well in the real pass rushing heavy league. But Jonah Williams would be a hell of a pick as well. Cody Ford from Oklahoma is a tremendous offensive tackle, but maybe more of a road grinder as much as their offense has thrown the ball a lot more with Lincoln Riley going in there. But I think any of those 3 guys would be tremendous.
Yeah, so I think that right now they're just playing games. I don't think they're going to take Kyler Murray. There was a time when I thought it was for sure Kingsbury loved him, wanted him, coveted him, had wet dreams about him. And I just don't think that that's the right thing. I think that financially it just doesn't make sense to have 2 first-round quarterbacks.
Totally agree.
On your
not
and
at that
obviously
same age.
they're not getting
right. Exactly.
Now, do you think
at that stage of development?
Do you think that they've already accepted something on the down low and said we'll launch this tomorrow at the draft?
There was word that they had already come to an agreement with who they were going to pick.
Okay.
And to me, that doesn't strike me as Kyler Murray because I think they would have wanted to move Rosen. I'm guessing it's an offensive lineman. I don't think that Bosa is going to move the needle for them. Health-wise, still a question mark. But he's an assertive player, but do they need that kind of guy? No, they need somebody to keep their quarterback upright. And that quarterback, Josh Rosen, has tremendous upside. And for me, it's Kyler Murray. The question is, how far does he fall? And at what point does he go, screw this, I'll go make, he's first round, you get your guaranteed money. But if he slips a little bit, who's going to take him? Or does somebody think, well, that's not my prototype guy, right? Like, does Denver say, we want Kyler Murray? Or would they rather have Locke or Jones or somebody else, or Haskins or whatever from Ohio State?
So there's a great possibility that we're looking at a Dillard or a Taylor to go as the offensive tackle first, right? Yeah.
It really just all depends on what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do with his offense.
I know that he's been very positive about what Josh Rosen's done during this whole entire kind of
Well, one of the things I would say, look, if you just look at the questions of leadership, if you compare Rosen's leadership, very, very confident, to Oklahoma's previous quarterback at Cleveland, who is very, very confident in himself. Does
Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, does Kyler Murray strike you as that type of dominant, in-your-face, take-control leader? Maybe he did not have to, but Baker Mayfield certainly asserted himself on that institution, and he's done that with the Cleveland locker room as well. And that's what Josh Rosen did. If you remember, there was questions about making immature or maybe self-absorbed statements.
Sure.
Not from behavior like flipping off the crowd and everything like Mayfield did, but still the question, is he really committed to this? Does he really think beyond himself? And but I think he's proven that he does.
Yeah.
In the offseason, they say he's the first one in, he's the last one out. He's really proving.
Sure. He's a smart kid too. He just sometimes he looks a little soft on the field.
Yeah,
but,
it's the physique. You know, he's kind of got that Eli Manning, a little taller Eli Manning.
But sure, if Brady's physique looks any better in
year
15, year one, maybe a little bit, but he still makes great decisions.
So, do you think Gruden then, who's a big Murray fan, takes him at 4?
I again, you're paying a lot of money to Derek Carr.
Right.
You know, are you going to move Derek Carr? Or are you going to break in Kyler Murray? Again, it's about paying that guaranteed first-round money to a quarterback. I don't think so. I don't think that's where Gruden goes with that pick if Kyler Murray falls.
Okay, so now an offensive tackle goes 1.
I think so.
Where do you think Murray goes? How far do you think he drops?
God, it's a good question. Like
somebody's
going to take him.
Somebody's Elway loves quarterbacks, right? I mean,
somebody's going to take him early, and it could be the Giants. I don't think so, but
no, he doesn't fit their type.
I don't think so either.
Body,
I totally agree. Yeah.
Throwing style, nor does he fit in Denver. But who's going to pick him? I don't have enough experience to answer that.
You're right. Yeah.
I don't think Denver would though.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're going to find out tomorrow. Our first round drafts start tomorrow.
Very dramatic. I'm telling you.
In about 24 hours.
Room, he's the number 1 pick, and all of a sudden he's like, "Oh no, now I don't know when I'm going." Right.
And then he just picks up his Oakland A's cap or whatever. Right. So we'll see. The Kyler Murray loss could be an Oakland A's gain, right? And is he still their property? He is till June, right?
Miami needs a quarterback. I mean, I just go down, and I'm just like, where is he going to go?
Yeah.
I mean,
is Kyler Murray still the Oakland A's property? Or whoever it was that drafted him, till June, right?
Till
the draft, till the amateur draft.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, we'll see. So
this could be really good.
So we talked a little bit about for Rams fans, it's like, okay, we're picking 31st, and then it's like, I'll see you on Saturday, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
here's a good point. Do you think that the Rams could trade that and just be more stocked in the second and third round?
Oh, no, sure. I mean, they've got the 2 late third rounds. They're not the best. There's going to be some jockeying for position. I think the Rams would possibly like to move into the second round, but I don't know what they're going to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
They have no second round picks. They've got 2 third round picks. I'm not sure where they're going to go with it. And then Chargers picking 3 picks ahead of them in the first round, but they have a pick in every round. So they have the same number of picks, but the Chargers get to pick 2 on the first day.
Right. Yeah.
The Rams needed an inside linebacker.
Yeah.
Their defensive front's incredible. Obviously, the addition of the pass rusher they've got now from the edge standpoint, they're going to be solidified. It's the year of the defensive lineman, though, as far as the draft prospects.
Yeah. The word is,
Tackle.
defensive tackle. Well, they don't know that they've lost Sue yet. I mean, that he's still a free agent, and then they might still sign him. So, there's some interesting things going on with the Rams. They definitely need defensive help.
They need inside linebacker. Yeah. But I tell you, Devin White, the kid from LSU, is fast and smart. I think there's a drop-off between Devin Bush at Michigan, who's tough and an outstanding player, but Devin White at LSU, I mean, completely is the top number 1 inside backer pick that could step in anywhere. And that's really where they had just injuries and maybe less productivity for just a tremendous year, if you could call it that, and he could fit in really nicely.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of whether he'll be around at that point. Where the Rams are picking at 31. It's all hell could break loose.
Because you look at mock drafts, right, and Tampa needs the same thing. So you see a guy like Tampa going after a guy like White. So, but after starting to look at this a little bit more, is like there are screaming with defensive ends. Like there are defensive ends everywhere in this whole entire draft. And then, there's a couple inside defensive linemen that are key guys. But I mean, you got a possibility of 3 Clemson defensive guys going in the first round. Like they're legit guys.
I think the Clelum Farrell, the outside defensive end stand-up, who could probably drop and cover a little bit out in the flat, is just a specimen and a tremendous personality that was extremely productive. And I mean, they've pinned their ears back there at Clemson and really challenged Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this kid Williams, Quentin Williams out of Alabama is just a man-child. Right?
Yeah.
And I always go back, like I look at these guys and you're like, you're massive. What were you when you were 18 years old in high school? Like,
Well,
that
I'll
would
tell
be
you what
crazy to watch that. I
Yeah.
mean, you see him 3 years. I don't know. Is he a senior? I don't know. He's a sophomore, right? Like, holy cow! 2 years ago, that massive man was going against high school. Like, how would you like to be lining up against him? Like, good luck,
my
kid.
My sophomore year, I had the pleasure of starting at 258 pounds, something like that, as an offensive guard. Now, granted, this is 1986, so people were starting to get big, but not giant. But I played against Jerome Brown, who was the National Defensive Player of the Year, who was going to be a surefire Hall of Famer, with the exception of his tragic passing, when he was with the Eagles. And he didn't beat me for a sack, and I held my own. But one play, he literally picked me up and bull rushed me past the quarterback. Kept my inside position somehow. Didn't get off me. Didn't get a minus. But I was on roller skates on that. And I felt, if he wanted to chuck me, I think I would have been gone. But, he would have been 305 pounds and just, like I say, a surefire Hall of Famer in the future. But now that development, kids are growing, and the genetic turnover we have from height and weight and strength training and nutrition, it just continues to, kids get bigger and bigger and bigger at earlier age.
The thing that I think is crazy, that sometimes just boggles my mind, is the speed. And we see it at the combines, and you've got these gigantic guys, guys like, Aaron Donald, who are the size that he is, but he, and again, he doesn't work out like a defensive lineman, right? He says, I work out like a running back, like a skill position. So those are his types of workouts. He's trying to get that burst, that speed, and he's just a beast. He's an absolute beast.
Well, that's, Charlie, because, you have to be in position, right, to block these guys, and that's where you look at guys like Bosa and Oliver, who are not actually that big at their position, but they're fast,
right,
and they can just get inside, right? And it's almost like, you'd rather have a bigger body and you're working more with, his weight and your weight, where then, I don't know what you guys do, but if the guy gets by you yell, fire, fire. I don't know what you yell, but you're like, here he comes, I tried.
You're looking at the mobility and the gap protection from an offensive lineman's perspective of what you're trying to take away from the defensive line. The linebackers and defensive front are always working in conjunction to cover a gap. So the speed, the ability to get to that gap, to cross the face of an offensive lineman, to get on his outside, corner on a power, something to the outside, to sweep, and then the ability to close upfield kind of has that unique combination. Nick Bosa is going to be better than his brother.
Yeah,
he is phenomenally talented. Had that groin injury, which was really odd, and hopefully that doesn't linger. And kind of, I think he should be healthy from what I've heard. Obviously,
so was that the right decision to shut him down?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think it's the college's obligation to take care of its primary concerns, but in this case, you're not going to do something to injure a player, especially when it's a soft tissue. If it's an acute thing, if it's a joint injury, a break, what are you going to do?
Right,
you just have to let it heal.
Let it heal. Yeah,
but you do have to make those decisions in conjunction with the player and what's best for the player as well. So, and that's a recruiting thing. That's where the program, if they're recruiting people that are going to move on to the next level, then do they want to be perceived as only doing what's best for the institution versus let's talk this through and do what's best for both sides.
Right, yeah.
That's the business relationship in a Division I program. Basketball doesn't matter what the sport.
Yeah.
Sorry to take you off of what the Rams were going to do at 31 or whatever they're
31,
at. Yeah. But again, I did hear some rumors the last couple of days that they're open to trade it if it's beneficial for them.
Yeah.
I think that,
but like Charlie says, they have gaps at inside linebacker. Yeah. They do have gaps on the offensive line now. Losing their center. So I think that they're likely to keep it. I think there's value in that first round pick. But again, it depends on the cap, their salary cap. They're very sensitive to what's going on. And again, you got first round guaranteed money. And if you say, hey, I'll pick 5 picks behind and trade you this, and now we've got a smaller contract, a more manageable contract, and maybe a little bit more cap space and more flexibility. But we'll see. I think it's going to be a lineman. I think they're going to keep it. I think they're going to get a lineman because, again, that it's a Ferrari, right?
With Sullivan gone, though, who was tremendous.
Right.
Garrett Bradbury from North Carolina State, hands down the best center in the country. That guy is phenomenal. There's a guy named Al Johnson that played out of Wisconsin a few years back, probably like 10 years now. I'm dating everybody here, but played for the Cowboys, and he wasn't overly big. He wasn't a 300-pounder, 285. His balance, his footwork, he almost reminded people like Mark Stepnowski, who played center that was very, very light for the Cowboys for a lot of years as well. But this Garrett Bradbury is an absolute tremendous pass blocker, can get to the second level, getting through his combo blocks. John Sullivan. So for many years, when I ran the facility at Athletes Performance, now Exos, I actually trained the offensive line for the combine and did all the position work, and I did that for about 8 years. And I was hired by the agents as well to work with people outside of the guys training with us at AP, physically and whatnot. Yep. And Sullivan was with 3 other guys in a draft year that all went in the top couple rounds and had great careers. They were starving for sushi, so I'm working out with these guys at the Velocity in Irvine, and they're saying, well, where can we go for some sushi? I said, well, I know a place that's great, all you can eat, $25, whatever the case may be. And it's not 5-star, but it's pretty good. You know the story. They literally were asked to leave. They were asked to leave. So these guys went in there, and they're all at the height of training for, again, the most important job interview of their life, training twice a day for, upwards of 8 weeks.
Lean protein.
Yeah, and they were eating very, very healthy, but you can't make a lineman eat like that all the time. So they went into this place, and it was usually a 3 or 4 rounder, all you can eat, which nobody surpasses. And they started getting the looks and the stares. And
they went chapter 13 shortly after.
Finally, the guy says, I think it's time to go.
Hey, Bill, gone.
They were happy. They liked the recommendation, though.
Yeah. Here, hot green tea.
More rice. Here's more rice.
Here's more rice. Yeah.
So the Rams will be bystanders for most of day one. More picks on day 2 and through the weekend. A lot of things to shore up. The Chargers, on the other hand, a little bit better off. They pick 28th, they pick 60th, and 91. So they have 3 picks in the top 100. Where are they going? Where are they looking, John?
Well, I mean, that as we said before, we started looking into how the draft's going to kind of flow, and it's kind of crazy that a lot of positions that they need. Some of their actual opponents in their league need the same thing, and there's a lot of people, like we said, is going to be very defensive-minded, I want to say, through the draft. And by the time they get to them, there's going to be a lot of these players that I could talk about that are probably going to be obviously off the table, right? So I think they're going to have a couple situations where they'll have a defensive, tackle or inside defensive tackle, and then possibly, the cornerbacks that they like could be gone by then. So I think with a couple guys they've lost at the safety position, I think if they could get a good safety to help James kind of roam. When James came in last year, I think they were in a situation last year in the defensive side where they lost Perryman and a couple linebackers. They played 7 pretty much cornerbacks and safeties on defense, right? So I think if they could actually, and we saw how great James was in this rookie year, that I think if they could let him float and roam, and then they can find a really good safety on the backside, and they can get that as their pick, knowing that the big defensive linemen have actually been already drafted. But you might be able to get the Wilkins kid or something from Clemson late. But, I was just looking at it, and I'm just thinking maybe the safety position would be, somebody that I think could be their first-round pick. I don't know. What
O-line's important, though, too.
True.
You got to remember with an aging quarterback. So if we talked about, what if there's some type of movement to get a Kyler Murray, to trade for, somehow get Drew Rosen, Josh Rosen, not Drew, the 8th. And, that could be a tremendous understudy for Phillip Rivers, who's earned the right.
It'd be great.
And I thought about that, right? But then I thought, well, are there going to be quality first-round offensive linemen by that pick in 28? You know what I mean? I totally agree. That's the first way they could go. But the top guys, the 3 or 4 guys that are the top guys that are difference makers, I think they might be gone, but I think that's obviously, I agree, that's number 1 on your list, but I think those 4 guys might be gone, right? So I think if you have it as a 1, you're right, offensive lineman, if these 4 guys are there, perfect. Then if I got somebody that can stuff the middle for the defensive lineman position, that's great. And then, maybe you get a guy like Thompson or somebody out of Alabama. They've even said a little bit about Marvell from
Marvell Tell.
Marvell Tell
but again, they can wait on Marvell.
Right, exactly. So there you got, the second round picks, right? But I think that offensive lineman and that defensive lineman is the 1-2, but will their guys be there by 28 is what I
well, the draftee that they had at Western Kentucky, Forrest Lampson, one that was tremendous productivity, has an ACL. Unfortunately, they haven't had a consistent, really high-producing offensive lineman for a long time, since Nick Hardwick, the center, who's retired and gone up to their booth, their broadcast booth. And so, but it's tough. It's tough, that positioning. And do you trade up for a lineman?
Well, there you go. There's another, they need a cornerback too, or they need a couple cornerbacks.
Yeah, I think they can wait. I think they can wait. I think they need they're better off getting a big ugly early at 28th or moving up to get somebody.
Because Gus Bradley's gonna, he has his type of safeties and corners that he likes. Kind of taller and have good span, weak span and stuff like that. But they've lost a couple guys due to one with free agency. They cut the other guy down in the safety position. They lost. Who was it? Jason Verrett went to the 49ers, and Jahil Adai went. They cut him.
Yeah.
So they need to fill those spots. So again, Charlie, totally understand. I'm 100% behind you, but I think it's got to be a game changer on that offensive lineman. That it's a guy that's gonna immediately make because that's what you got to do in your number one, right? They have to make immediate,
You got to make an impact.
Yeah,
sure.
At their first year, like James, Williams was our one from Florida State 2 years ago, or was it Florida State? The wide receiver. He got hurt the first year, but he came back the second year. And he had a pretty good year last year.
Yeah.
So
again, it's hard to predict who's going to go, but easier to predict what their needs are. But sometimes they go against what you might think.
So I'm thinking day one. I think you're right. I mean, how it twists around, but offensive lineman, safety, and defensive linemen, I think, are going to be those. That 28 through 90 pick. Do they go off and get a young quarterback in that sixth round, or their sixth pick or something at 200, or that could possibly be educated by Phillip Rivers? I don't know. I think the next draft, right, is the quarterback draft, right? Next year is more quarterbacks. Yep. I'm to be honest with you, I'm not too impressed with anybody that's a quarterback this year. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them.
Yeah, there could be 4 quarterbacks that go on the first day and in the first round, and none of them feel like franchise guys to me.
Exactly. The kid Missouri can sling it, but he's made poor decisions. I've seen him. He threw a lot of picks, I think. Right.
Well, picks are something that's pretty consistent for a lot of rookies' development, and obviously Sam Darnold did throw a lot of interceptions at SC, but that's
he blames that on T. Martin.
I do.
That's a sore subject.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. But speaking of the Pac-12, I'm worried about the Pac-12. USC does not have anybody ranked higher than 90 to 93 overall. That's Chuma Edoga. And an offensive lineman, and then it's quite a drop-off. And one of the guys in the top, it was in the hundreds range, or in top 100. Port Augustine has a dirty drug test. That's the report that's coming out now. So he's pissing dirty.
Substantial injuries.
Well, there's some Washington. There's there are a couple kids that in the defensive back. I think it's a couple
there's
cornerbacks.
Corners, a safety out of Washington.
Yeah,
plus,
there's 2 wide receivers, N'Keal Harris out of Arizona State and J.J. Sarga-Whiteside out of Stanford that could go top 12, 15, something like that. But the offensive lineman,
Andre Dillard.
Dillard, also one from Washington as well, McGarry, I think it is. There's some good talent, but it's you step back and you go, wow, it's thin.
Yeah.
And for LA, Pac-12, UCLA, their top guy in the top. They've got one guy in the top 200.
Right.
It's a tight end.
Wow.
Right, Caleb
Wilson. Who's a tremendous receiver. Wasn't asked to block a lot, which sometimes by the scheme that you come out of, it can help or hinder you at the next level. Can he block? Probably can, but didn't have to do it a lot. So he's now seen as more of a slot tight end and whatnot, getting downfield to stretch the field.
Yeah, and that has some value, but that's the third day type of talent.
He's very talented,
yeah,
though.
That's Saturday.
You know what's impressive is I noticed that there's possibly 2 kids from Iowa that are tight ends that could go in the first round.
They're going to go behind each other. T.J. Hawkinson and then Noah Fant.
Yeah.
And Hawkinson's the clear number 1. Fant.
Because he's more of a block catcher.
They can both do it all.
Oh,
They're both very.
I thought the other one
blockers.
was a little bit more.
You talk about the Pac-12 being down, but still you have, over the last few years, have you seen a migration of top picks coming out of the SEC? But the duration and quality of careers still come out of the Pac-12. Look at Chad Wheeler from SC years ago. Was he a 7th-round pick, Vinny, or was he a free agent? And he played for the Giants for a bunch of years. And Tyler Poteet, the tight end from SC, who's more traditional blocker. That guy's going to play in the league. I don't care where he gets drafted. That guy's going to have a hell of a career. So it's tough who gets picked in those top slots as the franchise. But the Pac-12 is still extremely productive for guys having influential and successful careers. A lot of volume still comes out here.
Charlie, successful, influential. I'm not there yet. First round is where you have your influence, and the big guys. Gaskin, Myles Gaskin, Bryce Love. Where are those guys going to go? The big names. There's not a quarterback. Jake Browning was the end all be all. I hear he's working with the QBD D3 or whatever it is. Tom House's performance group locally, and they found out. They said, "Look, have you ever played baseball?" He said, "No." "You ever played golf?" "No." They have him swing a bat, and he's got the same power and strength swinging a bat upright as he does on his knees. And they said, "That's your problem. You don't know how to twist your hips." So they're working with him, but that's a work in progress, right? So there's no quarterbacks out of the Pac-12 that might, maybe late. Meneshoff from the Washington State, maybe. Browning, maybe late. But there's I think a dearth of that top-level talent coming out, and it's a problem. It's a problem.
So, the irony is that Browning was teammates with Jonah Williams, who went to Alabama.
Right.
At Folsom High School up in kind of the north part of Sacramento towards the foothills. And Folsom, I don't know the kid's name, but he's a wide receiver. He's 6'5", 212 pounds, early high school graduate. He is the first teamer at Clemson spring practice.
Wow.
Got a friend of mine who's an Orange County kid that played at Illinois, played at Houston Oilers, Bobby Sebring, who's been up there coaching for years, and he said that Folsom is literally able to compete with anybody down here in Southern California, and certainly when they go to the state title games, they do that. But and I'm forgetting the kid's name, but the kid who's at Clemson right now, he said, is without a doubt a surefire first rounder if he stays healthy.
Wow. And then I think that there was the quarterback that was out of Washington that went to Georgia. Then he lost his job in Georgia, and now he's gone back to Washington. Is going to take Browning's spot at quarterback this year. Charlie, getting back to actually when you talk about Pac-12, is the Pac-12 losing these high-end football players here in Southern California? Are they starting now to venture off and go east? Or because I noticed that the coach at Oregon's doing a hell of a job recruiting. He got some kids from Mater Dei and St. John Bosco this year to go up, like 5 kids total out of those 2 teams. Like, are we starting to see some of these kids now going more because they want to be in this SEC? And
it's a combination of being recruited now.
Right. Are these guys coming all the way west to recruit these guys?
Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely. Kansas State came out and just signed a kid from who's going to be a senior at Huntington Beach High School as a tight end. Who he fits that H-back mold, 6'3", 225 pounds, that can chip, block, go in motion, go out in the slot, be attached and block as a traditional tight end. Kansas State, Chris Kyman is the one who just came in from North Dakota State.
Right.
Last 3, 7 of 8 national championships at 1AA. FCS, sorry. Because more teams come through to recruit, then you have more exposures and the ability to be on television. When I went to Florida back in the middle 80s, thank God we were on television a lot because we were on probation my first year. Couldn't go to a bowl game, but we could be on regional television. Then my junior and senior years, I didn't play my senior year, but we were on national TV 8 times. So I think going away doesn't mean anything as much. You have the internet, you have your texting, everything, your social media. Going abroad is not a big stretch like it used to be when I'd call my folks, once a week by collect.
Right, yeah.
And hope they picked up.
Right.
So I don't think that it's kids are wanting to get away because they don't value the Pac-12. It's still traditionally the best sports conference in the country, hands down. with the SEC right on its tail for all sports, but you just have the exposures. Now, if you do want to compare the atmosphere of playing at an SEC school,
right,
hands down, not even comparison.
Right.
Not even comparison, because the institutions there have looked at the colleges, the fan base have looked at the colleges like their pro teams. And only with Jacksonville showing up of recent year, the Saints have always been around the Falcons. But other than that, your college football and college sports in general, the fan base, the attendance levels that come out of the SEC, that increases funding, that increases donations, ticket sales, merchandise. It's really a very, very special conference to play in outside of the talent level that's there.
And that's what it gets in getting to the draft. Do these scouts more focus in on those that conference more than they do the Pac-12?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
Right.
Everybody's scouted at every level. They do pro days. When we were at Athletes Performance, we hosted the University of Hawaii's Pro Day at our facility. At that time, the Home Depot Center, now the StubHub Center. It made it more cost efficient for the players that were in draft contention, free agent contention, to come over from the islands versus everybody sending their staffs over there. But no, they're going to examine every program at every level across the country. That's what the scouts do very, very well. So the truth is they find you if you have the measurables. I believe there's a junior college lineman. I just read about it. Forgive me, I wasn't prepared to talk about it, but I think the kid has 1 year of a junior college. He's 25 years old, defensive tackle, one of the Mississippi JCs. They said this kid's going to get drafted.
Really?
Has a chance to get signed, and only playing at that level because of his productivity and his measurables, and just that he's a mature 25-year-old with not a lot of beat up.
And that's where a guy you can get him from absolutely dirt cheap and bring him in and go, we'll teach you how to do your thing.
In certain
NFL.
positions, you can tend to do that. You got to remember that football is the least skillful sport that's out there. The decision making, the precision to be a quarterback, the technical aspects to be a corner and be able to retreat and do things backwards. But the rest of this, it's about athleticism, toughness, being in a position. Can you play with pain? Can you be in the right position versus to shoot a basketball, to dunk a basketball, to dribble, to shoot a hockey, hit a baseball? My God! So, not to diminish the quality of what and the challenges the football player has to go through, but skill development can be taught.
Right, and more than in most sports.
Absolutely, hands down.
Yeah, and absolutely.
The volume of hours that go into hitting a baseball, successful baseball players don't hit well when they're practicing every day because it's such a minute, fine-tuned.
Right. Yeah, you can't teach big, and you can't teach grit, and you can't teach speed.
And I played golf with a couple hockey players, right? And I said, if you got two kids where this kid is actually unreal with the stick and can handle the puck like no other, and this kid can skate, he goes, I'm going to take the skater every single time because I can teach him how to handle the puck. He goes, but to get a kid that can handle the puck to skate like this kid, like that's going to take a long time for him to learn those skills. To do it the other way around, completely different. I got a kid that can go backwards, forward, sideways, skate with the best of them, can accelerate. I can teach him how to handle the puck and do all that kind of stuff. That's the easier part.
One of our Kitman Labs clients in the NHL right now, we did an analysis of what led to productivity for them, trying to evaluate how much strength and force production and power that the athletes have. And it was determined that sheer strength wasn't required as much as an athletic cutting type of skating. So if you're not gonna skate as well, then you need to be physically stronger to be in the clutches, to be able to get out of collisions and whatnot. But if you're an adept, changing ballistic type skater that can accelerate and change direction and skate away, then you didn't have to be as strong. And that's some of the relevance of the analysis that we provide. Not getting at the Kevin per se, but it's what the teams are trying to look from their productivity. Then how do they develop that? Then how do they draft that?
And it's amazing going to the draft, right? I know we kind of gone all over the place, but it's just this first pick is so important that they have to dissect every single possibility, right? To make sure, because they're going to spend so much money on that kid that
absolutely.
That it's just they need to know every nook and cranny about that linebacker that we might take, or that offensive lineman, and
about personality, about background, about their disposition and their work ethic, and they that's why they do their due diligence. These are investments, and then there's big money, and there's a lot at stake. Haskins out of Ohio State. The reports coming out now that reporters trying to get talk about his New Jersey background, and then he runs into his dad who won't return texts or phone calls, and then finally he talks to a bunch of people, and then the dad calls him back and says, "Who are you talking to?" He says, "Well, I'm talking to guys who coached him in high school and this and that," and he's essentially saying they don't know the whole story. So he's trying to control the story, sure. And so the NFL has to look at that and say, wait a minute, I'm like Lonzo Ball, right? Are we drafting your dad here too? What's going on?
That does not happen in the NFL.
It happened with that other Ohio State kid that with his mom, right?
Wanting to have an influence, but
right.
It's on a much smaller scale. That basketball family and the dynamics they had was 1 in a million. You can see that it's already fallen away as the season progressed and finished up with the influence of the dad.
Yeah, but all it takes is one person knocking down the door, right? So you get
sure.
You get one dad who's an absolute moron and is demanding influence and this and saying nonsense things, and this guy's sort of on the other side. Haskins' dad is sort of a very religious guy, and he's trying to control the brand. Right? And he's trying to control the message that's sent out about this kid. He wants him to come across as this wholesome guy. I mean, he only lived in New Jersey for a short amount of time, but that angle that the reporter was taking was about, his time in New Jersey, exclusively about that, and essentially the dad hung up on the guy. So the reporter outed him and said, look, here's what's going on with this. And I think that those types of things they're blips on the radar, but there are NFL teams that might, the New York Giants are one of the teams that was considering taking him, and that was the angle that they were talking about, the kid coming back to New Jersey. And little things like that, they pop up.
You said it earlier that it's a major investment.
Yeah.
And they're trying to find out everything that's wrong with you so they can make a sound decision.
Right.
So it's a negative evaluation, if you will, because what you do positively stands out on the film. What you do positively can be reported on, interviewed on, and everything. But again, their job is just trying to be thorough, trying to vet as much as possible.
Yeah, it's like Kevin Costner. He wanted to know if anybody went to that guy's birthday party. Right, in the movie. Did you see the movie?
Yes.
Okay.
Draft Day.
Yeah, Draft Day. No, but also I also heard
Vontae Mack.
Vontae Mack.
I had it written down on my piece of paper.
That was the guy they drafted. But
yes.
the other guy, I don't remember his name.
Bo Callahan.
Yeah, that's right. He remembers Bo Callahan. And then I've also heard the things that how owners can sort of screw things up. I heard an anecdote about somebody coming in and saying, "Hey, Art Modell really wants to take." I can't remember who it was. Jerome Wheatley or something. His barber told him that that's the guy that we should take. And he comes in, and the general manager's going, "Oh my God!" He goes, "My father's a barber too. Let's not take the advice of your barber."
Right.
Well, look at Jerry Jones with the Cowboys for what he's done from the branding, the revenue generation, kind of the marketing, the sponsorship of America's team as they're known. Was a very, very successful player in college, but didn't do one stitch of coaching along his business career. And then he owns the team and virtually controls player personnel decisions with his family anointed into each of the 4 senior management positions. And again, is it earned? It's earned because you own the organization, but is it warranted from experience of years of scouting, or is it letting the boss make emotional decisions? I think it'd be a tough institution versus Robert Kraft, who seems to let Belichick make decisions in his player personnel decisions for what they feel is best for the institution, and maybe he doesn't have that ego to have to be out front, although he's got other issues as we've come to learn. So.
Little tension. Still gotta get that rubbed out.
Oh boy.
Well, there's lots of other stuff we could talk about. The last thing before we wrap it up, thanks, Charlie, for your NFL
Charlie,
insights, and we'd love to have you back and talk more football, talk more about Kitman Labs and the types of things that they're doing with performance analysis and sport and injury prevention and sports science. So thank you so much, and we'll talk segueing from Jerry Jones and the family business to the Lakers, who are also a family business, family owned, and Genie Bus. It's become quite a dumpster fire at this point. The coaching, who they're looking for, who they're going to get. Now the reports now that Magic Johnson quit because he was blind copied on emails that were going back and forth between Genie and Rob Pelinka, where Rob was being very critical of what Magic was doing and what he wasn't doing. And frankly, I think, to not tell your boss that you're quitting and to quit like that, it's cowardly. It's absolutely cowardly. And this makes it look even more cowardly. And but that doesn't take away from the fact that this is a team that is reeling. It's in disarray. And now the rumors are out that LeBron, they're on a short leash with LeBron at this point. And who is there? They can't screw up this coaching decision. Yeah. They got to get it right. And the fact now that Kurt Rambis has been in on some of these
Pat
interviews,
Riley has actually, his name's been floating
he has said right out and said he's not interested in it, and I don't think he would be. He'll take a phone call from Jeannie Buss just out of courtesy, and the memory of her father, but that's about it. And so, it's a tough situation for Laker fans at this point.
Yeah, I don't even know where to go with it, because it's a complete drama situation up there, and I don't think I think they're reeling, like you said. If Ty Lue is their answer,
at this point, I would take Ty Lue if that's who LeBron wants, just to settle that part of it down.
But I would only sign him for like 3 years, because you only got a couple more years with LeBron, right? Like,
he's got an option,
right? And I don't know. It's just I look at that situation. It's like a soap opera,
It's absolutely a soap opera.
Yeah, and I just kind of go down. Now Luke's in trouble up in
and that's a shame.
Up in Sacramento, and now she's coming out to the public. It's when one soap opera leaves another, I guess.
And now what do the Kings do? And obviously this is a situation where now the Lakers are like, phew, we dodged that bullet. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole. But now what do the Sacramento Kings do? They hired Luke pretty quickly.
I think
without much vetting.
I think you got to support him if this, and hopefully these things pop up a lot, and they're always handled out of court, right? I mean, it happens with NFL football players a lot, actually, and basketball players, but.
With general managers like Isaiah Thomas and things like that. I don't know enough. I mean, we're in an era now where accusations like this are an everyday occurrence. They're happening more, and there are two sides to every story. Or actually, some people say there are three sides to every story. There's yours, there's hers, and there's the cold hard truth, right? So. We don't know, but she's coming out and she sounds earnest, and Kelly Tennant from Spectrum Sportsnet, who says she thought of Luke as a friend, and that he threw himself on her, and it's a very tough situation. Have you heard anything about it, Charlie? Or
I just know that the ownership, the owner for the Kings has really done a great job of rallying that community around the organization, instilling pride that had been maybe gone because of the lack of wins over the years. And I think he's a pretty solid guy with a great business career that it'll be an interesting decision for him to make on how he handles it. But again, you made the statement that they hired him quickly and there wasn't much vetting going on maybe during that decision. But was this brought to light back then? I don't know enough about
because I always wonder, like, why now? Why did she come out now?
Again, I'm not a woman.
Right.
And again, these things can be deep seated and very emotional, and there are plenty of women, and I'm sure Charlie, you know this, with a strong wife who has strong opinions about these sorts of things. It's like it doesn't matter that it took her this long.
Right.
If she's coming out and this is her truth,
when it
doesn't.
Comes out,
it just doesn't matter.
Right, yeah.
And for her,
you have to guard against feeling that sense of, was there some type of opportunistic presentation of this situation by saying why now, but it does put pressure on the timing on the organization to react appropriately.
And that's the hard thing, because they rushed into it. But then they have to do the due diligence, and again, this is a part where this is not a criminal charge. She came out and plainly stated that her lawyer didn't have a very good answer, but she said she didn't think that this warranted a criminal thing. She didn't want Luke to end up being arrested or go to jail because of these allegations. So they're handling it in civil court. And again, that opens up to criticism of, why is she doing it? Is it just for money, or is it because of whatever? But look, she feared for her job, and that's what she says. And it's these accusations are de rigueur at this point. And of course those things happen. We know those. As men, we know that those things happen, and it's really a shame. This is the career of a young man, a promising career of a young man, even though he didn't do very well in L.A., who seems like a good guy. But, Kelly Tennant has made these allegations, and she's got to be out there. And she obviously knows what this can mean, what it can mean for her career, what it can mean for her publicly, and the kind of, responses that the public will make, and saying why now and why in this way. And it's just doesn't feel good, the boys will be boys thing just doesn't fly anymore. That it's a different era. And, it doesn't matter when she came out, right? She came out now, and that's her thing. Yeah. But let's get to the truth. Let's figure it out, right? Let's figure it out. And the Sacramento's got some hard choices with this and what they're going to do. And in a really weird way, the Lakers are fortunate that this didn't come out. Because what if they had decided we're going to keep Luke, and then this has to come? Yeah. And then
gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, exactly. To something that's already a total, complete tire fire. Yeah. I think we're about ready to wrap it up.
Yeah,
Anything else you wanted to add?
I mean, we can always talk Angels, Dodgers baseball. I mean, that's and the soccer. But I think Charlie mentioned, and I don't know if he did any homework on what John wanted to talk about with, this UCLA women's gymnast.
He's a big Pac-12 honk.
Yeah.
And
we talked a little bit
the
off
Title
there,
IX sports.
But
I'm a honk of success in sports, and to have somebody who has that type of performance to be that successful and to dominate, which has really never happened, on a year that a coach as legendary as she has been, having it her last season, it's pretty impactful. I mean, congratulations to that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just for any type of young student athlete or athlete of any age to have such just dominant performances. That's once in a lifetime. That's such an accomplishment.
Yeah,
29 years.
Yeah, and look, and I'll be accused of being sexist, and it's just like, as far as I'm concerned, the Pac-12 to me is not about the Title IX sports. It's not about the water polos. It's not about the soccers. It's just not about that. I want my football and my basketball teams to be better.
If it wasn't about that, they wouldn't have all the national championships.
And that's it, right? It wouldn't be the Conference of Champions without all the softball, the UCLA softball and gymnastics and soccer and women's soccer. And I get that, right? But
one of the things that, again, I had a tremendous privilege of working at a training facility of elite athletes at all levels, high schoolers, college, masters, professional. And when you train an athlete that works hard and you watch an athlete come back from injury, the gender doesn't mean anything. The crowd size doesn't mean anything. Again, if you were watching softball or gymnastics in the Southeastern Conference or the Big Ten, you're going to be watching it with a lot more interest and reverence because of the fan base. So it's, again, in this land of entertainment that we're at here in Southern California, a lot of tremendous performances can go overlooked. Just because there's so many things to do and there's so many places you got to drive and get to.
Yeah, and for me, the Pac-12 and Larry Smith, the commissioner, Larry Scott, the commissioner. Larry Smith used to coach USC.
Up there.
Yeah. And but Larry Scott. They're talking about the Pac-12 and that it's not about the money. The Pac-12 network is not about the money, even though they're being out moneyed by the SEC and the Big Ten. It's not about the money, and they say it's about the personalities. It's about the these other sports. You can't watch some of these other sports. I mean, have you tried to watch Pac-12 Network? It's hard to watch.
You got to remember, my son rode at Oregon State and was able to be on national television because of that at the Pac-12 championships, and then the national championships aren't broadcasted for the men's side, which is not an NCAA sport. It's an IRA sport, partial scholarship, whereas the women's are fully scholarshiped. on the NCAA side. So again, I come from that side of, hey, I'll watch Pac-12 tiddlywinks if they put it on, because it's going to be good.
Coming up next on the Pac-12 Network, Cornhole. Stanford and Cal.
I think ending this podcast, one thing that is going on right now in sports that I think is a must watch are these hockey games. These game 7s and game 6s that we've experienced the last couple days have just been tremendous hockey. And I know, hockey is tough to watch on television. It's obviously great to watch live, but when playoff hockey starts, the TV it's a must watch. I mean, the Sharks Knights finished in game 6 and game 7 was just absolutely sensational.
Game 7 was ridiculously
it's just crazy, good. And now you've got a game 7 going on right now with the Caps and
Carolina.
By the way, you guys are tied 3-3 with Chicago right now. So there you go. End of the third, 3-3. That's going into overtime. It was 3-1 Washington for a majority of the time.
Something Charlie said about sort of the ballistic skating. The guy who came up with the goal to end the game for San Jose. You just see the kind of leverage that they get and how skating. It wasn't all about the stick handling. But it was all about getting the skating, getting the position, grinding past that guy, and then bringing that puck across and putting it past a stretched out Fleury. It was unbelievable and a great way to end that game.
If you remember Herb Brooks during that magnificent, once in a lifetime 1980 run, it was all about positioning and where they took over occupation on the ice against that Soviet bigger, stronger, faster, stronger, better passing team.
Right.
So they created opportunities to fast break against them, get into the creases, and really work that puck in a way that was going to be open ice, and they stayed true to form.
Yeah.
Well, it's good stuff with NFL draft tomorrow. Thanks so much, Charlie Wright, for your insights. We'll love to have you back and talk more about it. For John Adams, I'm Vince Morales. Good night.
Peace.